Calvary St. Joe. I'm Chuck Rhein, and I don't know if you expected it or not, but today we're in the book of Obadiah. It is the oldest book in the Old Testament, and it's 21 verses. So if you want to memorize it, knock yourself out, because you know one day in heaven, Obadiah is going to ask you if you read his book. So I actually want to begin in chapter 25 of Genesis and just read to you about both the birth of Edom, and that nation came from Esau, descendant of Isaac. His brother was Jacob. And then we're going to look at basically the end of Edom in the book of Obadiah. So Genesis 25, just to set up this scenario, Rebecca is pregnant and she was unable to bear children. And so Isaac pleaded with the Lord. In chapter 25, verse 21, she was barren, and so the Lord granted his plea, and so she had twins. And she sensed major, whatever it's like to be pregnant and have twins. In verse 22, she says, "If all is well, why am I this way?" So verse 23, we have this prophecy about one of her twin sons, Esau and Jacob. So the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb," and I'm sure it felt like that. "Two peoples shall be separated from your body. One people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger." Now, in that culture, the way things went, it was opposite. You know, the younger was going to serve the older. There was going to be a blessing that went to the older son. But, you know, God's ways and man's ways don't always go together. And so it's interesting with the birth of a nation, because the two twin sons, Esau and Jacob of Isaac, are family. And yet what happens, and this is really the gist of the book of Obadiah, written about 840 or 586 BC, is the judgment on Edom. And you might ask, well, what did they do? Why is God judging the nation? And my response would be like, what didn't they do? The Edomites were in constant conflict with Israel. They rejected Moses' request to pass through their land in Numbers 20. They opposed King Saul in 1 Samuel 14. They fought against King David in 1 Kings 11. They opposed Solomon in 1 Kings 11 and Jehoshaphat in 2 Chronicles 20. They rebelled against Jehoram in 2 Chronicles 21. And then they went on to settle from the 13th to the 6th centuries in Mount Seir, a mountainous region south of the Dead Sea. Now, we only have a short amount of time as we go through these individual books of the Bible, but I think out of the 21 verses, what gets my attention is in verse 10 of Obadiah, when it says, "For your violence against your brother Jacob, shame shall cover you, and you shall be cut off forever." And you would think, wow, these minor prophets, these guys are kind of negative nannies. These people are kind of, no wonder they're called minor prophets. But, you know, what you and I need to take away from this is that God is in control of circumstances. As we look at a pandemic-affected world right now, and just at any time in life, the fact that beginning in Genesis chapter 25, God would predict what would happen, and that ended up extending to a nation. And then the thing is, by the time we get to Obadiah, God has already sought for the Edomites to get right. He's already sought and spoken through the prophets for them to repent. And this is the end for them. You're not going to meet an Edomite today. I'm pretty sure that King Herod in the New Testament we're introduced to in the book of Matthew would have been in the latter realm of the Edomites. But here's the point, is that God is the one that writes our history. And he is the Alpha and the Omega. He's the beginning and the end. And what you and I can glean from these principles, especially in the Old Testament, there's so much history, there's so many things to learn, to understand historically. But what we need to come away with is that God is the one that authors and writes our life. And the time to get right and to repent and to be obedient is now, rather than chastening later. So thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next time.